Hey, GAP Math students, this is a video for Intro to Percents, Ratios, and Proportions, objectives 78 through 80. So you should be grabbing your Intro to PRP packet and then turning to the page that starts with objective 78. This next test will have 3 objectives on it, 78, 79, and 80, meaning that it will have 15 questions. So what we're going to do is do a couple of problems for each of these objectives, and then kind of tell you where to go to practice them, and then make sure you are copying these notes down and then sending me a picture of them afterwards. That's how you get your free points for taking notes. And then after you've done that, you can ask for the test on 78 through 80. So we're going to go out of order just a little bit because I'm going to do them in the order that they show up here, so that they mix up the problems in these. So we're going to do it first, which is determine a percent where a ratio not in 100s is given in words. So it just means they're going to give you some sort of ratio, which is just comparing two values, and the bottom number is not 100, and you have to write it as a percent. So first one we're going to look at that involves that is number 62. Okay, so it says she surveyed her classmates on their favorite sports. She discovered that 1 out of 20 classmates liked soccer. What percent of Sasha's classmates liked soccer best? So one thing to be looking at is just make sure they're going to give you basically a number out of a number, something out of something. In this case, 1 out of 20 people like soccer. Now just make sure the question matches the statement they gave you. So they're looking for the percent that liked soccer best. Okay. And that's what they told you. They said 1 out of 20 liked soccer best. Okay. And I think most of these problems are going to keep that the same. Now, they could maybe get a little tricky. They could say 1 out of 20 liked soccer, and they could say what percent didn't like soccer. Okay. And I can talk about that in a second. But here it matches up. So all you're going to do is basically write it like you'd see it like a test score or something. 1 out of 20 like soccer best. Okay. So now what you do is you're going to take the fraction, and first you're going to write it. We want our answer as a percent, but we're going to first write it as a decimal. And again, to get a decimal with a fraction, you take top divided by bottom. So you take your calculator, you're going to go 1 divided by 20. Okay, that equals 0.05. Then you change it to a percent by moving it 2 spaces. It's always 2 spaces, and the percent is a bigger form of the number, so you move it to the right 2 spots, and that's just 5%. So you're going to write a ratio, which is a fraction. Then you're going to go change that to a decimal by taking top divided by bottom, and then you change that to a percent. So answer here is 5%. Now, I won't write this down because I don't want to confuse you, but if they gave you a statement like 1 out of 20 liked soccer, and they asked what percent didn't like soccer, well, you would just use, if 1 out of 20 liked soccer, that means 19 out of 20 didn't like soccer, and then that's how you would set up your fraction. Okay, I think most of these are going to give you, I don't think they're going to be tricky in these. I think they're going to tell you straightforward, but we'll look at another example. 63 is another example like this problem. So they're planning a large fundraiser. He wants to know what kind of music to play during the fundraiser. So he surveyed 200 people who were likely to come and found that 160 of them like to listen to bluegrass music. It says what percent of the people surveyed like to listen to bluegrass music. So the question is wondering who or what percent liked to listen to bluegrass music, And that is the statement they gave you. They said they surveyed 200 people, 160 of them liked to listen to bluegrass music. So one thing to make sure, don't always just assume they give it to you in the right order. So here it said 1 out of 20, so you put 1 over 20. Here they tell you what the whole number of people they asked first is 200. So that's what goes on the bottom, because they surveyed 200 people. Out of the 200, 160 liked bluegrass. So 160 out of the 200 liked bluegrass. So now we're going to go just like we did up here, change it to a decimal. Again, top divided by bottom. So 160 divided by 200 is 0.8. And we got to change that to a percent. Now remember, that's not 8%. We have to move it 2 spots. So 1, 2, any open spots, you put a 0. Okay, and it's 80%. Okay, so to practice that one, if you turn the page, so that's number 62 and 63. On this side, this one right here is like 62 and 63. And basically any of the problems here that have percents as an answer would be like that. So if you want to practice that one, make sure you get that right, and then you could practice more. But if you at least practice one, understand it, and then go through and maybe practice another 1 or 2. Make sure you check your answers. And I think you'll understand if you need to ask questions or if you got it. Okay, so that was objective 78. Okay, so you write it as a fraction, change it to a decimal, change it to a percent. Okay, now we're going to look at objective 79, which is calculate a percent of a whole number where the answer is a whole number. So the 2 examples we're going to look at that are actually on the next page. So we're going to look at 67. Okay, and I'm going to show you 2 ways to do this problem. So maybe I'll write them up here. So one is using what's called the percent equation. So when we're looking at something like a percent sentence, so let's say I said 50% of 20 is 10. There's 3 things that make up a percent sentence. The one with the percent sign is obvious, that's the percent. Okay, and it's kind of like if you had a test score, what it's out of is like what we call the base or the whole. And that's almost always after the word of. And then the other item is what we call the part. So like here, the part of 20, 10 is a part of 20 that represents 50% is another way you could write that. So those are the 3 pieces of a percent sentence. So a percent equation means you can find the part by taking the percent as a decimal, that's important, times the whole. Okay, so 2 things next to each other in parentheses means times. Okay, or you could write percent as a decimal and then an x times the whole. Okay, so that's going to be one way to do it. And I'll show you that method, and then I'll show you another method also. So if we took this problem, all the problems they're going to give you in this one are going to be the same, but this will help you in the future as well. Okay, so know what they give you and know what you need to find. So they give you, it says 9%, so that's obvious, that's the percent. Then the word of, and then 300 means that's the whole. Okay, so we're looking for the part. That's what we're looking for. Okay, so it's saying what is 9% of 300? So we're looking for the part of 300 that's same as 9%. So we're going to take, we want to find the part, and we're using this up here. So we have to write the percent as a decimal. Well, if you have 9%, remember, percent is the bigger form, so you have to make this smaller by 2 spots. So you go 1, 2. So 0.09 is the decimal, and we multiply that by the whole, 300. Okay, so now you just take your calculator, hit 0.09 times 300, and that equals 27. And that's our answer. Okay. The other way to solve these, and you can use either way, whatever is going to make more sense to you, call the percent formula. Okay. And percent formula always has 100 here. The part, the piece that you put up here is the part. The piece you put down here is the whole. And the piece that you put up here is the percent. And you don't, the difference here is you don't change that percent to a decimal. That's why it's over 100. So if we take this problem, the way you can set this up is you always start like this. Okay. Then you take what you know and fill it in. So like we said, the percent is 9. So that goes here. Okay. You don't change it to a decimal. It just goes in as 9. Then 300 was after the word of. That's the whole. That is on the bottom. And then this is what we don't know, is the part. That's what we're looking for. Okay. So the way you solve this should sound familiar, but maybe you need some reminding. It's called cross multiply and divide. So you take the diagonal that has 2 numbers. So this diagonal has a 300 and a 9. This has a question mark and 100. So you take the diagonal with 2 numbers and you multiply those. Okay. So you would take 300 times 9 and you divide it by the other number, which is 100. Okay, so you multiply here, you get 2,700, divide by 100, and you get the same answer, 27. Okay, so 9% of 300 is 27. Okay, so let's do another example like that. We're going to go down to 71. Okay, it's a very similar problem. Okay, so we're going to look at 44% of 500. What is 44% of 500? So that's a percent, has a percent sign on it. The word of is here. So that's our whole. And just like all the ones that are like this, they're going to be, that means we're looking for the part. So it's like saying what part is 44% of 500. So the one way we can do it, percent equation, okay, is, remember, I'm not going to rewrite the whole thing. It's up here. The percent is a decimal times the whole. So the percent is a decimal, 44%, you go 1, 2, is 0.44. And then we're going to multiply that by the whole, which is 500. So then all you do is take your calculator, hit 0.44 times 500, and you get 220. Or C. Okay, if you like this way better, the percent formula, you start it like this. The percent's 44. That goes on top. Then remember, the part goes on top here, the whole goes on the bottom here. So that's written up here. So 500 comes after the word of. That means it represents a whole. Goes there, and we are looking for the part. Okay, so again, cross multiply and divide. So you take the diagonal that has two numbers. Okay, so 500 times 44, and you're going to divide by the other number, which is 100. Okay, so when you multiply those, you're going to get 22,000. You're going to divide by the 100, and that'll give you 220 also. So either way you do it, you get that answer. Okay. I'm not going to do another one of those, but another good example of those, and there's more than this, would be like this one here. So this is like numbers 67 and 71 that we just did. And then there's more of them like, or sorry, no, that's wrong. It's like, that's going to be what we do in a second. I hit the wrong one. 77 is like 67 and 71. Okay, and again, like 78 is also, you can see very similar that it's like that. Okay, all right, so we're almost done. We're going to go back. Page, it starts out with the objectives, and we got objective 80 to look at. We'll do two of those and we'll be done. So 80 is just going to be what we just did, except with a word problem. Okay, so it says, so like number 61 here. In 1 week, 2,310 people visited a local zoo. Of these, 40% were children. How many children visited the zoo? So make sure the percent they give you matches the question they ask. So 40% represents children, and they ask how many are children. Okay. And so what they're actually asking for here is, they're saying, since they're asking how many children visited the zoo, and they're saying that it represents 40% of this, we are trying to find 40% of 2,310. Okay, so we're going to use what we just used. So those notes are at the top of this page. Okay, if you haven't written those down, you should hit pause and write that down. You should have done that already. So the two ways of doing this. So we're looking for the part of 2,310, that is 40%. So we change that percent to a decimal. So you go 1, 2. So that's 0.4 or 0.40, however you want to write it. 0.4 works just fine. And then times the whole, which is the 2,310 people. Now you just take 0.40 times 2,310, and that's going to equal 924. Okay, the other way to do it, percent formula, so you set this up. The percent is 40. The 2,310, that's the whole, or all the people, so that goes in the bottom, and we don't know the part. So we take the diagonal, and we multiply those two numbers. So we type in 40 times 2,310. So I guess I can write it out here. Divided by the third number, which is 100. So that equals 92,400. Divide by 100, and you get 924 also. Okay. All right, one more would be number 64. It says, in a survey of children who had visited the zoo, 45% said they like giraffes best. if 280 children were surveyed, how many said they liked drafts best? So again, the question matches the percent they gave you. It says they want to know how many like drafts best, and that is the percent they told you. Okay, so we're looking for the part that like drafts best. So we're going to take the percent as a decimal, moving that twice, 0.45 times the whole, which is the 280. So that's how many kids there were. Okay, so we just take our calculator, 0.45 times 280, and that equals 126. Oops. Again, I'll do it the second way, just in case you like the percent formula better. If we're doing it the second way, start out with this. The percent is 45. 280 represents the total amount or the whole, and we're looking for the part that is that 45%. So you take the diagonal that has two numbers, you multiply them. So we're going to go 45 times 280, divide by the third number, which is 100. So you type that in your calculator, you get 12,600. Divide that by 100, and you get 126. Okay, so when you're actually doing these, and when you do the notes, you should write both ways down, but when you're actually doing these, you can pick whichever way makes more sense to you. You don't have to do both of those. One that's like that one is just the very next one. If you want to try one that's exactly like that. Trying to erase that, sloppy. So number 65 is just like 64. Okay, and then to practice more, go through, pick out other problems, and you might not know exactly what type they are, but you look at these other examples and figure it out. You're not going to have to do every problem in here, but do enough to make sure you understand either that you're getting them all or that you need to ask questions. The answers are at the very end here. Okay, so you can look at the answers there. Again, make sure you're copying these notes down, take pictures and send it to me. I think there's 2 pages. Yeah, this page, and you don't really need to take a picture of the third page. So the first 2 pages, take pictures, send them to me. That's how you're going to get your points for the notes for 78 through 80. And then you can, if you're understanding everything, you can just ask for the test. If you have questions, use the class time to write me a personal message, and then I can either make a new video or just do a video chat with you, and we'll answer the questions. So if you have any questions, let me know.